I wasn't ever really closeted. I was really just clueless. I mean, I was in my 40s or something, and it didn't, I mean, it just never even occurred to me that I might, be a chick.
Today on Rainbow Country, a queer artist spotlight featuring Canadian transgender artist Trans Star.
Hi, I'm Christopher Rice, and this is Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Trans Star, hi, how are you?
I'm very well indeed, thank you.
I have to say, thank you so much for being here, especially for me and for the listening audience to get to know you as a Canadian independent artist. Let's start here. 2019, your debut EP called Famous Door. Talk to me about your debut EP, Famous Door from 2019, and essentially the sonic landscape that is Transtar.
Gosh, a sonic landscape. Okay, well, I have so much to tell. It was such a long time ago, but I was actually the whole TransStar project, believe it or not, was kind of someone else's idea. My friend Chris Tate of Park Music in Toronto just sort of said very casually, like over drinks, I could distribute your music if you want to just we could put out an album, and I thought okay. And so we chose these 6 songs, and Chris was kind and generous enough to enlist the services of a famous producer engineer, Michael Philip Voivoda, who mixed the work that I had produced and turned it into this really like loud, kind of almost raunchy, sort of like electronic rock record or something. And I
Very
just kind
Carol
of,
Pope-esque.
oh, do you think so?
Yes.
Oh, how interesting. I wasn't, I've never heard that comparison.
Especially vocally.
You don't say, golly. Well, that's needless to say, a flattering comparison. I just kind of sing, I just sing and sing and sing until it sounds good. I mean, I work in this room. I don't know if the picture is a part of the interview, but you can see my room is behind me. I just work in this room and I just record, my vocals over and over and over until they don't sound unbearable. That's basically my singing technique.
Hmm. Okay, Chalk Circle, a Canadian alternative rock band formed in 1982, still active, I believe, to this day. Probably best known for their hit single April Fool, a great Canadian rock band, Chalk Circle. Lead singer Chris Tate, who you were just talking about, co founded Chalk Circle and his independent record company, Park Music. You were just saying over drinks that he would help to distribute your music. How did you and Chris Tate of Chalk Circle, how did you guys connect originally then?
Oh golly. Well, I would have to disclose hints about my actual biological age to answer that question. However,
You can just allude.
I am unafraid. No, no, I'm extremely elderly. I was working with, as you know, everyone in the music business except me is called Chris something. And I was working, this would have been something like 1991 and I was recording a song, and the producer I was working with, Chris Wardman, said, "Oh, we need background vocals. I'm gonna call a friend," and the friend was Chris Tate, and so I met Chris Tate for the first time then, and we've just known each other ever since. And then in 2015, I was starting up my nonprofit electronic music education program, Blackball, and I went to Chris to see if he could help me, find some donated equipment or some donated, synthesizers maybe. And that all of that actually Chris Wardman donated a very nice synthesizer at that same time. And so it's just me and all the Chris's. And you know, this is when we got into this conversation, to be candid, the informal nature of our working relationship is has stayed, very it's really very informal. I mean, we don't even have anything written down, and that gives us both a great deal of freedom. I'm this my next album I'm making by myself here in Guelph, and that rhymes. I just realized, and I'm really just kind of uh in a mood to just work on my own, and it's very much the theme of the album coming up. So I haven't told Chris about this. I will have to seek his blessing, but yeah, we have a very we have I think when you're friends with someone for like what 35 years, you can afford to be you can be unworried about the housekeeping details.
Hmm.
And I think it's made the music better actually in a funny way.
So we were just talking about Chris Tate from Chalk Circle. Let's move to. You were just saying everyone's called Chris. Another Chris, one of the co-founding members of Blue Peter, Chris Wordman. Blue Peter, I love Blue Peter. I play their music all the time. Don't Walk Past. And their music videos from the 80s, amazing. Love them.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that connection, your connection to Chris Wordman and how that came about.
Oh golly, that would be
Going
literally
back even further?
the 19 that would literally be the 1980s. I think um I had a band, and I think Chris came to see the band. Is there still a Rivoli? I haven't been in Toronto in a really
I
long
think
time.
so. Yeah.
Okay, you think so? We played at the Rivoli, and of course, the Rivoli was just the hottest place, and Chris just, saw us and heard the music and kind of walked up to me in the filthy dressing room, and this very shy young man. I thought he was going to ask for my autograph, and he said, "I'm Chris Wardman, the producer. Do you want to do some recordings?" And we did a whole bunch of recordings, and uh one of those was a song, not a very electronic song, actually. This would be 1990, entitled "Girl of Your Dreams," and that song got picked up by CFNY, I think. Is there still a CFNY? I mean, this is all ancient. These are things I haven't thought about in a terribly, terribly long time. But yeah, they're very nice
But
people.
it's the story of your life.
I guess so. I guess so. And what a life.
Okay, so the singing, the drumming, a track called Marry Me. The singing, the drumming are performed by, I, from my understanding, inmates of the Grand Valley Institution for Women in Kitchener, Ontario.
There, there
Talk to
is,
me about that.
right. So that now I have to evoke, believe it or not, another Chris. When I was putting together my electronic music education program, I did a lot of shadowing. I did a lot of sort of following around people who had created special nonprofit music education projects. Um, by themselves, for themselves. And I wanted to do that. I wanted to follow in the footsteps of those people. And I got connected up with a personage by the name of Chris Brown, who started an organization called Pros and Cons, and worked in the prisons in the Kingston area where he is located. And I sat in on a session, and he was nice enough to let me open up my own shop at the women's prison down the road here, Grand Valley Institution for Women in Kitchener, Ontario. And so for it was a real whirlwind between 2017 maybe and just before the pandemic. I produced two albums that of songs written by the women at Grand Valley Institution for Women, and the ones who wanted to participate. I mean, we didn't make anyone take part, and they wrote. Some of them needed a little bit of help with the songwriting, but they wrote, I produced. And Chris Brown and I mixed those two albums together. One was released in 20, I'm going to say 2018, and then there was a follow-up in 2020. And there are other albums, there are other pros and cons albums that Chris has produced at the prisons um in Kingston. Anyhow, I was sitting in at an event, most likely a pride event at the prison. And the pride events at the prison are held in the Grand Valley Gymnasium. Now, I'm just going to assume that you've never been inside a gymnasium at a women's prison. There's nothing quite like it, and not great acoustics. And because I was helping one of my participants do one of her songs, I had all my equipment with me, and there were a group of women chanting and drumming as part of an indigenous ceremony, which is a big part of the life and culture at federal institutions in this country and provincial institutions as well, I assume. Something like 30% of the federal population across the country is Indigenous people, which is just an unspeakably horrible statistic. But anyway, I just kind of hit the record button on my rig and then went up to them afterwards and said, I just recorded some of that. Would it be acceptable for me to use that in a future project? And they said yes. They all said yes. They were like, sure, that's fine. And so when I was writing "Marry Me" and producing "Marry Me," everything else on that song is me. But there was just this one little bit that I thought needed something extra. So I sort of started digging through. I have a lot of audio. I'm a little bit of a magpie. I'm constantly stealing digital audio from things, and a lot of it's just sounds, bird song and noisy, noisy automatic doors. I have a collection of noisy automatic door sounds, and I came across this recording from the chanting and drumming and in the ceremony. And there was this phrase that fit in so precisely with the melody that I'm singing, and it's at the end of that third verse in "Marry Me." Like it was, I didn't have to. Usually, you have to manipulate samples if you want to, you want to pitch match them or beat match them, and I didn't have to do any of that. I just dropped this, 800 millisecond piece of audio into the song, and it just fits so well. But you do have to watch for it. It is very short. But yeah, so they get a credit on that
Mm.
album.
Well done. Well done.
Thanks.
Okay. Brave New Waves,
Ah, Brave New Waves.
a
Brave New
Canadian
Waves.
CBC radio show that ran from 1984 to 2007. They aired your cassette demos, I believe back in the 1980s, if I'm not wrong. But
The mid
having
1980s. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
having the support of CBC radio, especially early on in your career, what does that mean to you to have
Well,
that to
yeah,
have had that support?
it means so much. I can't tell you. It was such a great time, and I was very lucky. I mean, I think ironically, I think I was probably better known as a musician during the years of, I mean, I'm gonna say somewhere between 1983 and 1988 or 1989, something like that, when they were playing my stuff. And it was all very much an accident. Um, I really, I didn't know I was a student. I was a first year university student in Montreal, and I think I met someone at a party, and she was friends with the programming director Kevin Komoda, who is just an amazing, amazing person who I still talk to periodically these days. Interestingly, I'd like to point out that Kevin's first name is not Chris, and which is, remarkable. And he just, heard my stuff, and he said, "Well, we'll play it on the air." And I was like, "Come on, you've got to be kidding me!" Um, but he wasn't. And so I started working a bit more carefully on my backing tracks, and I did the same kinds of performance in 1983 and 1984 and 1985 that I'm doing today. I mean, I just used a tape recorder. Now I have all this wonderful, equipment, and I can, mix my tracks while I'm performing, and I can, change tempo. I can do all kinds of crazy things. But my performance mode is largely the same as it was in 1983. And yeah, so they would just play my things, and they like rotated them. I mean, it was just extraordinary. And it was all just because I lived in the same city as the programming director. I was, studying at a university in the same city as to be honest, I don't remember how we met. Um, but I put that down to extreme old age.
So, Trans Star, how did this all start for you? How did you end up becoming a musician, becoming an artist? What are the origins of all of that?
I got very fixated on electronic music technology when it had maybe been around maybe a decade in a commercial way in the late 1970s, I guess. And the first commercial synthesizers. I'm a bit of a sort of electronic music nerd. I mean, I've studied it. Uh, Nonprofit music education is the subject of my current PhD. I'm studying here at the University of Guelph. I'm in the second year of a PhD, and my area of research is the delivery of music education, and electronic music plays a big part in that because electronic music is, you know, it really has not gone away. I mean, there were people in the 1980s. Um, who really were very dismissive of synthesizers and drum machines and electronic music. And, it was like a thing that was going to go out of fashion. And, I mean, that just hasn't turned out to be the case. I mean, all you have to do is look at, EDM and its enormous influence and its very great popularity. And, electronic music is um, so important culturally, and it is it's a force that binds, a force that unites. Even I realize I'm not answering your question. I think it might have been um, someone I knew. I think that Kraftwerk played in a high school auditorium in Ottawa, Ontario in the 1970s, and someone I knew, I can't remember who it was, someone I knew went to see them. I was too young. And it was like a brother or a sister or something. And what they described was so just mind-blowing to me that I went with my little allowance and bought a Kraftwerk album, the first album I ever bought. It's actually on the wall beside me right now, the same album. And I think that was a touch point. Um, I became uh, uh, I became a kind of follower of Vangelis Papathanassiou. His picture is on my wall too, who is I think probably best known as the composer of the Blade Runner soundtrack,
Mm.
but is responsible for a vast body of work. And
Vangelis?
Vangelis, don't you know? The Greeks say Vangelis,
Mm.
and I am told by a Greek friend. And the thing about Vangelis is that his his electronic music is so organic. it's like lace, or it's so not mechanical. All the knocks, that are delivered to electronic music and its practitioners, that it sounds repetitive, and it's just a machine, and Vangelis really turns that argument, on its head, and his music is so kind of it's sensitive, it's sensual, it's emotional, and it's so simple. His music is so simple. And
Just think of the theme song from Chariots of Fire.
so it's right, which is, obviously an incredibly famous. I actually, that kind of, that banging kind of white noise percussion effect that opens up that track. I steal that all the time. I'm like, I have put that effect or something like it on so many of my songs. Um, but yeah, I was very sad when he died. And so he's sort of been my teacher, and yeah, electronic music is just, I'm a real believer, I think it has a lot of power. And because of the technological developments that have emerged in the last couple of decades, it's also much more accessible than it used to be. That's why I started Blackball. That's why I started my electronic music project, because it's young people who have not got access to electronic music technology. I mean, you can't do it without a computer and very expensive software. And it's probably not bad to have someone, walking you through that. And I'm still running that program, and I'm teaching synthesizer at the university even, which is really nice. I have 3 students, and we're working with an old modular synthesizer that was donated to the university. And yeah, so electronic music will always be a big, big part of life in the world for me. I think it's fair to say.
So there has to be a story behind this particular name, Transstar.
Mm-hmm.
Is there one? And if there
Mm-hmm.
is,
Uh-huh.
can
Yeah.
you share?
Yeah. There I I'm a little bit of a car buff. I'm a little bit crazy for f funny old cars. And there when I see I don't know, an Avanti, or a Maserati Bora, I will whip out my phone and take a picture of it and send the picture to my son, because my son is also kind of crazy about old cars. And this was right after that conversation that I had with Chris Tate about, putting out an album. And I started getting offered as soon as that became known around, the musical community in Guelph is not large. And I started getting offered shows, and I needed a name. And I saw this big orange Studebaker Transtar with one S. It's a pickup truck from, I would say, the early 1960s. And there's a motorist who, I still see it sometimes, drives around in this pickup truck, and it says, and it's got a silver badge on the side that says Transtar. And so I took some pictures and sent them to my son, and I was like, okay, well, I was, like I say, I was being offered dates, and I had to put out an album. And I thought, well, I'll just take the name off the side of that truck, and I just added an S. So it would be Trends Star, and thus a non-legendary electronic music artist was born. Yeah, and it's really as simple as that.
So you and I are both part of the LGBT community. For myself, I am gay, and for yourself, you are transgender. So talk to me about that aspect of yourself, and when did you start recognizing that part of yourself and that part of your identity?
Oh, I'm a really slow learner, and I I get asked this, quite a lot. And the the same the question is usually worded as the question is usually put to me in the form of a closet, specifically referred to or alluded to, when did you come out is the question. And I've always said, well, I wasn't ever really closeted. I was really just clueless. I mean, I was in my 40s or something, and it didn't, I mean, it just never even occurred to me that I might, be a chick. And um, so yeah, there's not a lot going on upstairs. I just really just think about synthesizers and makeup, and
Mm.
um, so I
But looking
was
back over your childhood and adolescence and those periods of time for yourself, do you think that looking back now from where you are now and seeing certain things, do you think that there were little signposts along the way that you just didn't pick up on at the time?
that's exactly right. There were just a billion things. I still remember things.
Mm.
I still come up with funny, little remembrances and sometimes quite big things. And that I have a tendency to nanny my friends. I'm like, put your sweater on. It's cold outside, and don't swear and wipe your nose. My friends are all like, just it's all right, mom. I mean, I've always sewn. There's just a million crazy little things. And I just didn't really pick up on it. And then, like most people who are in their 40s, I did a lot of re-examining and you know, I mean, this is late 40s, I guess. I sold my home and I moved to Europe and I um there wasn't for a long time I didn't really have a fixed address. I I um I decided to start blackball. I ended up working in a women's prison. I mean my life became, and to some extent still is, a very um not nomadic life, but I mean, I just don't I don't have a partner. My kids are grown up. I don't have a dog. I don't have a mortgage.
You have electronic music.
I have electronic music, but electronic music is mobile,
Hmm.
and thus so am I. And so I lead a very, I mean, I can really make things up as I go along. Um, and now I mean I'm female, physically, thanks to our amazing healthcare system and the wonders of medical science and I don't really even remember not being a girl, honestly. I mean, I don't really it just seems like another universe to me. Not a bad one, but I
That was then and this is now.
I guess so, yeah.
So
I mean,
I just have a handful of minutes left with you, Transtar, and
quite so.
you have new music coming up
I
later
do.
on in 2025. You have some
Yes,
new
I do.
music coming up.
Yeah.
Talk to me about what you have in store.
Well,
It's another EP.
another EP. It's four songs this time, and they have been selected on I'm sort of on the rebound from the second album, I Bitch. I Bitch was written just the songs on I Bitch were written just when what we're seeing now was beginning. Um, this kind of um focused kind of I mean I can't really think of another way to say it, bigotry against trans people that's coming from obviously coming from south of the border and it's I'm reading this book about decadence and revolutions by I think the author's name is Barzun. I can't remember his first name. And his definition of a revolution is the violent transfer of power and property. And the one thing that we can say about the current anti-trans rhetoric is that it is non-revolutionary because trans people don't have that much power and we don't have that much property. At least I don't. And so there's we're really not a threat in the way that, like Protestants or or whatever were, in the 15th century. And it's kind of a fake thing. You know what I mean? It's kind of a put up job a little bit. Trans people are bad. I mean, when in 2020, when that first began to show its very unattractive face, I started writing a lot of really kind of angry, kind of political songs about that. And I think all the songs on I Bitch are that, including and especially the title track. I mean, obviously that's a song, that's a fight song, and um, I still do that song live and I still get a real, it can be a bit overwhelming. I mean, there's a real kind of fists being pumped in the air, kind of, you know, um, a refusal to back down. And that was great. I got it out of my system. I just want to have some fun now, and I want my audiences to have fun. And so this album coming up is called Dowager, and Dowager, it's just one dance song after another. Like it's just dance floor, future classics in my fertile imagination. But it is literally dance music. And when I say dance music, I do not mean, Nine Inch Nails or I mean happy dance music. I mean like, you know, the Salsoul Orchestra. I mean Chic. I mean, g- jive talking. I mean, just loose, happy, danceable music that is not too serious. And that's what this EP is going to be about. And I'm just kind of wrapping it up now. And there's going to be a release event here in Guelph on the 6th of December at the incredible sound music place Silence. It's called Silence with a capital S, and they have the most incredible sound system. I've actually recorded some of the vocals for Dowager at Silence just because the room sounds so great. And yeah, I think it's time in my universe to move on from the anger and the protests, which don't really do much anyway. And and I know because I played at a protest in 2023, and let me tell you that was a day. And I think that we could all use a break. Everyone. Even the people that hate trans people, like they need a break too. They need some time off, and they need to cut loose and get out on the dance floor. And that's kind of that's what my that's what my optimistic outlook is. The songs are really upbeat, and when I say upbeat, I don't just mean they're danceable. I mean they're happy, they're silly, even.
But
Um,
they're very smart lyrically. People really they can dance and move and shake their groove thing, but they can also go a bit deeper. Especially
if
with
they,
especially with your I Bitch track, like great lyrics on that.
oh, thank you.
You're
Oh,
welcome. You're
yeah.
welcome. I have to say, Transtar, thank you so much for your time. Well said. Well said. Well done. Well
Thank you.
recorded. Thanks for your
Thank you.
time.
Thank you. It's been great to be here.